How would you like to improve your health and keep your family safe? You're listening to the Healthy Home Hacks Podcast, where we firmly believe enjoying optimal health shouldn't be a luxury. Healthy Home Authorities and husband and wife team Ron and Lisa will help you create a home environment that will level up your health. It's time to hear from the experts. Listen in on honest conversations and gain the best tips and advice. If you're ready to dive in and improve your well-being and increase your energy, you're in the right place. All right, here are your hosts, bowel biologists, authors, media darlings, vicarious vegans, and avocado aficionados, Ron and Lisa Barris.
Hi, friends, and welcome to today's show. This is part 2 of going undercover, literally, and taking a deep dive into what's really lurking in your conventional mattress. And today's show is going to be on fire as we delve into the heated topic of flame retardants.
Yes, and I'd like to kick off today's show with one of my favorite Walt Whitman quotes. Now I see the secret of making the best person. It is to grow in the open air and to eat and sleep with the earth. Sounds beautiful, right? But so many of us are so far removed from eating and sleeping with the earth in today's toxic world.
That's right, Lisa. In fact, according to the Detox Your Sleep study by Made Safe, most mattresses are made of polyurethane foam, which is treated with flame retardants linked to endocrine disruption, lower IQ, hyperactivity, altered sexual development, fertility issues, thyroid dysfunction, and even cancer. Because polyurethane foam is highly flammable, they have to add flame retardant chemicals to meet the mattress flammability standard. Whereas when you have natural materials like wool and cotton that are generally less flammable, they don't require that extra flame retardant.
Someone who has a whopping 7 post-nominal titles after his name and 4 decades of experience investigating and assessing hazardous materials and contamination, resolving environmental problems, and protecting human health, safety, and the environment is our special guest today, Barry A. Chick. Barry is the founder and technical director of Naturepedic, a manufacturer of award-winning certified organic mattresses. He has had a lifelong interest in preserving the environment, not only for us, but for all future generations as well.
A board-certified environmental engineer, Barry is an advocate for legislative reform and was invited to testify in Washington, D.C. for a congressional subcommittee exploring chemical reform. Barry is also a frequent speaker and thought leader on the benefits of sustainable product design. And when shopping for his first grandchild's crib mattress, he was troubled to discover the state of the baby mattress industry. And from that moment, Barry was inspired and he was determined to create mattress products that were safer and healthier for every child. And working in tandem with his sons, Barry established Naturepedic in 2003.
Friends, if you missed part 1, head to episode 34 now. Barry, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back, Barry.
It's a pleasure to be back. The last one was great, and I just enjoy talking to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, likewise. We have so much more to cover today that we didn't even get time to last time. So let's dive right in. Barry, if you can share with our listeners who aren't familiar, what exactly is a flame retardant?
Okay, so in order to answer that question, let's step back for a moment and review the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that we do not live in the natural world that our grandparents lived in. In our grandparents' time, everything was cotton and wool and steel and wood and just more natural kinds of things. We do not live in that world. We live in a petroleum world. That is the big picture that we all have to stop and understand. We live in a world where everything is made from petroleum, okay? Now, if everything is made from petroleum is very flammable. Mm-hmm. Petroleum is as flammable as it gets.
Yeah.
On planet Earth. So how do we deal with that? And let me just say, in your grandparents' days when there was a fire, everybody just, yelled and screamed, got everybody out of bed, run down the steps. Today, when there's a fire and the smoke is halfway up to the clouds, people die much quicker. And you see that on TV or when you're reading the paper. Why? It's because there's so much petroleum in your products. In a mattress, typical queen size mattress, you're sleeping on 20 gallons of petroleum.
20
Wow. Guys, did you hear that? 20 gallons of petroleum. You just spent a couple $1,000s to sleep on 20 gallons of petroleum.
That's right. So what's a flame retardant? First of all, people say flame retardant or fire retardant. There's no difference between the two. Let's just get our vocabulary straight. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you say fire retardant or flame retardant. You mean the same.
Tomato. Doesn't matter.
Tomato. And when you say fireproof, the same idea. Okay. So let's just ask a simple question here. If everything has flame retardants, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's assume if everything has flame retardants, why are the manufacturers putting all that in the products? Are they trying to hurt everybody? And the answer is no, of course not. Nobody's trying to hurt you. Okay, it has nothing to do with that. The problem is that if the product is made from highly flammable materials, then there's two reasons to put it in. One is because you know better. You're trying, you know that this is a highly flammable material, so you're going to add some flame retardants to bring that flammability down. And the second reason, which is the flip side of the same coin, is that the government may require it. Now, the government is not necessarily going to require flame retardants per se. That's not how the regulations are made. Right. The government doesn't say you must put flame retardants in. What the government says is you must meet a certain standard.
Right. Yeah.
And in order to meet that standard, if your material and your product is highly flammable, in order to meet that standard, what are you going to do? You're going to add flame retardants. So that's the reason why you're finding flame retardants everywhere, because they're dealing with all this petroleum. So we can talk about the different standards, but you understand at least the bigger picture here as to why there are flame retardants.
Yeah. Now, why would a conventional mattress company who's using a heavy amount of petroleum, polyurethane foam, why wouldn't they use a natural flame retardant? Because it wouldn't be powerful enough for the amount of petroleum-derived material, or is it more expensive?
All right. So flame retardants allow the mattress to burn. It just slows it down. That's number one. Okay. The manufacturer needs to meet a standard. The standard doesn't say the mattress can't burn. That's not the standard. They're adding a flame retardant just to meet a certain standard. Now, to the next part of your question, why can't they use a more natural material? Let's say like wool.
Right.
But that's a different reason, because they're selling the mattress for $500.
Okay. Price. It's a cost issue.
It's a price issue.
Okay.
So, they're going to use the cheapest thing they can. Gotcha. And adding some flame retardants, adding a bunch of chemicals is going to be a lot cheaper than using cotton or wool or, material. And there's a lot of material that goes into a mattress.
Right.
You're not talking about a small amount of material. And the price adds up.
Right.
So that's the bottom line. They're trying to meet a standard more times than not, and they're trying to do it as cheaply as they can. And if I may say so, if the product, whether it's a mattress or something else, if the product is made overseas somewhere and they can save some money, trust me, they're going to save some money.
Okay.
Right? Did I make my...
Yeah. And we mentioned this on the last episode, but I'm going to mention it again. Listeners, you are investing in your health when you buy a healthy organic mattress, like the ones from Naturepedic. These manufacturers, as we learned last episode, have to pay for these certifications. They're paying for higher quality materials that aren't going to harm you and your children and that are going to last the test of time. And so that's really what it is. This is an investment in your health. And as I always say, invest in yourself now or pay a big price later, because we've had family members pass of cancer in the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of illness in our family. I'm sure you have, if you're listening. No one's immune to knowing somebody that's, become sick. And it's kind of, with a lot of people, it's out of sight, out of mind. Like, oh, I'm healthy right now. I don't need to worry about that. I don't even need to buy organic food. But guys, this all matters. This is stuff that's going into your body, into the air you breathe. And I just want to reiterate that because I don't want costs to always stop people because you'll end up paying it later.
Barry, can you explain to our listeners what is an FR barrier?
An FR barrier is something physical in the mattress that blocks the fire from spreading. Okay? So if it blocks the fire from spreading, even if it blocks it for just minutes, that might be enough to meet the government standard. So that's one of the ways that manufacturers meet a standard. There's a lot of ways to meet a standard. There are chemicals that are added to materials to try to make that material less ignitable. And then the other way is, okay, the material will ignite, but we're going to block it, and so that it doesn't travel, for 15 minutes, okay, or try to block it at least partially. So there's different ways that they deal with this whole issue of flammability, and a barrier is one way to do it. Now, many manufacturers will say, "Oh, no, we don't have flame retardant chemicals. We just have a flame barrier." Well, what do you think the flame barrier is made
sniffing.
of? You're still getting flame retardant chemicals, and there are hundreds of flame retardant chemicals that are used right now today.
Hundreds. What would you say are the most common? Do you know?
So there are hundreds of flame retardant chemicals, but here are some that are common that we've collected. Okay. Organophosphates, organophosphonates, melamine phosphate, boric acid, tetrakis, ammonium phosphate, organochlorine, organobromine, antimony oxide, modacrylic, melamine, and these are just some of the common ones that are being used today.
That's crazy. That reads like a chemistry book, not a mattress, right? I mean, that doesn't, you don't even have to know what those are to know you don't really want to be sleeping on those.
Yep.
So flame retardants are in so many consumer products today. I mean, I think a lot of people associate them with baby car seats, but might not realize that they're also in electronics. They're in upholstery, although I believe the legislation has sort of lessened on the requirements for upholstery. But why are they in so many consumer products today?
First of all, the use of flame retardants, I'm sorry to say, has not lessened, including upholstery furniture. Let's make that clear. There are regulations for mattresses, then there are regulations for upholstered furnishings, which means your couch, your sofa, or your dining room chair that's covered with some upholstery. Okay, so let's talk about that just real quickly here. Those are separate regulations. For mattresses, there are two major flame retardant related regulations. For upholstery, there used to be only one, and only in California. Effective this year, the federal government just took that California regulation and made it national. So there's going to be more flame retardants on the market coming in the next few months than less. Okay, so the problem is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Once again, if the material is petroleum based, they're gonna be using flame retardant chemicals, flame retardants of one kind or another. Okay, and once again, there are many chemicals, there are many ways to play the game, and it's hard to say which is worse than what, because most of them have never been tested. Okay, I can cover the basic ways that these regulations work. Okay. So
isn't that the California one was SB 117, correct?
TB 117, yes. TB
okay, that's the new one that's now nationwide.
That's now nationwide.
Okay, which is totally separate from what mattresses have to adhere to.
Well, one of the mattress standards is similar to TB 117. Okay, so they're separate standards, they're not exactly the same, but there's one mattress regulation that's similar to the upholstered furnishings. Okay. Now, what's that standard? That standard is called a cigarette standard. Okay. How did that come about? So let's go back in time a little bit. So in the 70s, when polyurethane foam took over from cotton. Before the 70s, most mattresses, most couches were filled with cotton and wool and things like that. But then polyurethane foam came along in the 50s and the 60s. By the 70s, polyurethane foam had taken over. The problem is these products were very flammable. And if you were smoking in bed, you fell asleep, and the cigarette was lit, and cigarettes were hotter than they are today, which is a separate issue. All right. And if the mattress caught fire, you're dead. Because it's petroleum, and the petroleum just catches on fire, you're gone. You don't have a chance. Okay. There was a big outcry. The government made a regulation in the 70s for mattresses called the cigarette test. Okay. 16 CFR 1632. Now, what's the cigarette test? The cigarette test is you take a cigarette that's lit, you put it down on the mattress, and you see if the mattress chars, turns black. And if there's charring for more than 2 inches from any point on the cigarette, you fail. You cannot sell that mattress. And they do 9 on one surface and then 9 on the other surface. So they do 18 trials. And if any of them fail, then you cannot. So how do you get to a point where it doesn't fail? And the only way to do it is with flame retardant chemicals.
In the conventional mattress. Yeah. So let's protect the smokers. So, I mean, right. This is like about protecting smokers, and yet we're harming healthy people and people who don't smoke. Would you say, if you were to guess, would you say we're better off not having flame retardants in mattresses?
If I had to sleep on a synthetic mattress or a synthetic couch, and now this new TB 117 that went federal, that's going to create that cigarette test for every couch, every sofa in the country, every upholstered chair in the country is going to have to meet that standard now. So they're going to be adding lots of chemicals. So if you asked me if I had to sleep on a synthetic mattress or sit on a synthetic sofa, would I prefer it with flame retardants or without flame retardants? My answer is very clear. I'd prefer it without the flame retardants.
Right. Because your chances of dying in a fire, I would imagine, are pretty low, especially compared to your chances of getting all of these illnesses linked to the chemicals that are in flame retardants.
Exactly. The flame retardants don't really solve my problem. They just trade one problem for another problem.
Right.
And the new problem is perhaps even more risky and more dangerous than the old.
Yeah. That should be optional when you go to buy a mattress. Hey, you're a smoker. It's $50 if you'd like the spray. We'll spray some chemicals on if you're really worried about falling asleep with your cigarette. I mean,
by the way, and this is a California thing, you'll see another tag on there. We can talk about tags, but there's another tag that'll say no added flame retardants.
No added.
You'll see that on all kinds of products, mostly on furnishings. No added flame retardant. Well, guess what? The guy who made the finished product didn't add any flame retardants. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But how about the previous factory where they made some components?
Yeah.
And how about 2 factories ago? Your typical product, the materials will go through several factories until it gets to the final product.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So the last guy in the chain didn't add anything, but the previous person, and then they play a different kind of game. Okay. Mm-hmm. They'll say that this flame retardant was used in a previous factory. The flame retardant was used not as a flame retardant. It's just part of the formula to make this material. Oh, is that a flame? What's your problem? It's not a flame retardant. Okay. So there's no flame retardant, and then the last guy never added, and they give you a thing that they check, no added flame retardants, and you say, great, that's what I want. It's a great product.
Yeah, you really so much greenwashing. We talked a lot about that on the last episode, and really, you guys, today, I mean, it's just, you have to be your own investigator. You have to ask those questions. You can't always trust manufacturers unless you know and you have a relationship and you have this trust with a manufacturer that you've trusted for a long time. But that's just the world we live in. Like you said, Barry, it's not the same world that it used to be. 85,000 chemicals registered for use with the EPA. Less than 200 have been adequately tested. People naively think that they have been tested, and otherwise they wouldn't be for sale. So we live in a world where we just have to do our own due diligence and ask those questions.
Absolutely. Barry, you gave us some examples already, but what are some other products or just reconfirming products that contain significant amounts of flame retardant chemicals that you can think of?
If it's made with petroleum, it contains flame retardant chemicals. That's the bottom line.
Right.
Yeah, what you have to do is look at the product. Is it synthetic or is it natural? Okay. If it's synthetic, it probably contains. That's the easy way to know. And
Okay,
it all
that's a good rule of thumb.
It's what I started this whole program with. It's always go back to that main point. Is this a synthetic petroleum-based product or is it a natural product?
Yeah.
That'll guide you as to, whether you really want that product or not.
Okay.
How about our producer's vinyl suit? Would that be?
Would that need a flame retardant?
He's very green and sustainable.
I never say anything bad about our producer.
No, he's
I'm joking.
He's laughing. He's laughing. Okay, so we talked a lot about flame retardants. I'm just going to say car seats, upholstery, your mattresses, even kids' pajamas, right? If kids' pajamas are made out of a synthetic material under a certain age and they're not snug fitting, they are required to have a flame retardant, which blew my mind when I first discovered that. But what are some of the health effects, Barry, of these flame retardants that we're being exposed to so much in today's world?
There are endocrine issues and there are carcinogen issues. But those are perhaps the biggest of the issues. Okay. But, for adults, there's fertility issues. Fertility is becoming a very big problem.
It's huge.
If you read what's going on, I mean, people are really getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And what do you think is causing it? It's chemicals.
It's chemicals.
Chemicals are really messing with our hormones and with our system, and even obesity can be
yes.
I
read that some of the chemicals are obesogens. We did a blog post on this for anybody who wants to go back and find it. You can search on our blog. It's obesogens. Like, what are obesogens? They're actually chemicals that mess with your metabolism and your fat storage and your production of fat. And they are the culprits that you would suspect. Like BPA, bisphenol A is an obesogen. I know some of the flame retardants are, the fire retardants, and the list goes on. I think PFAS, some of those chemicals, the perfluorinated compounds. And these are chemicals that we're exposed to every day. And there are so many people struggling with weight, and we have an obesity, I would say, epidemic in the country. We have obesity is at the highest levels it's ever been, especially with children who suffer from that, which is really unfortunate because it's tough for children to deal with that. And then they struggle with that the rest of their life. And that leads to all kinds of other issues. And then the hormonal issues, we talk about young girls are going into puberty very, very early now. The infertility issues that you talked about, just hormone disruption, menopause and premenopause, and all of these issues that really didn't exist before. And they're endocrine disruptors. These chemicals are endocrine disruptors. So they mess with estrogen, they mess with the hormonal balance. And so this goes beyond like the convenience of an inexpensive mattress. This goes beyond like, oh, hey, that couch was just a cheap deal. And hey, yeah, that's great. Because we are absorbing these, we're breathing them, we're drinking them, we're being exposed, like we're sleeping on them. So I couldn't agree more, Barry. It's just, it's like, what's the tipping point? When are we going to understand that we have to take responsibility for this and for our choices?
Yeah. There's something called regrettable substitution. Let's define that. Okay. So manufacturer says, we don't use BPA. That's nice. What did they do instead? BPB.
Right. BPS, I think, was a big one, right?
Whatever.
Yeah. And they found out that was worse.
Yeah. So we don't, so that's one of the games that get played in industry. We're not, we don't, and many products will say, no XYZ.
Yeah.
Well, but what are they substituting it with? See? So when they're substituting it with something that's just as bad and maybe even worse.
Yeah.
So there's a term now called regrettable substitutions.
Wow.
When you hear that term, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. And you see that everywhere now. And I think even the environmental working group interview, she talked about that. So some of the manufacturers know this, and they're playing like cat and mouse, knowing that by the time legislation and science catches up with, the studies on, the new harmful chemical, they're already onto another one, and it's just sort of staying one step ahead. So they never really get their hands slapped.
Exactly. Industry is always one step ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as the government just tries to go after this chemical and then that chemical and then that chemical, industry can play that game all day long. They're always switching the formulas. They're always finding different ways to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've said, if you're innocent until proven guilty, they'll always be ahead of you.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you try to get away with that? And I know we see that in the fragrance industry, in the personal care industry. We see that in so many industries. So it just always comes back to what grandma used. I mean, even, right. And you talked about, we used to sleep on cotton and wool, and now it's a luxury, right? That's considered something you upgrade to. And the same thing with organic food. That used to be food. And now it's, oh gosh, you need organic, you're high maintenance, or, that's more expensive. And it's really going back to what was vinegar and baking soda to clean your home.
Yeah. Now I'll give you a statistic that you might not believe me, but it actually is a true statistic. And it makes the point as strong, if not stronger, than anything else I've seen. And that's a statistic about kids. All right. From the age of 1-year-old to 19-year-old, what is the single biggest cause of death in kids? Now, from 0 to 1, there's SIDS. So let's ignore that. Okay. From 1 to 19, other than accidents, when a child dies, and unfortunately there's a lot of that going on, what's the single biggest cause? You know what it is?
No.
It's cancer.
Ooh,
wow.
Yeah.
How in the world does a 2-year-old get cancer? Where does that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the point is made as strong as you can make it when you're talking about a kid. Mm-hmm. And then of course you expand it. How many children have the developmental, disabilities and so on?
Many today. Learning issues.
It's all over. It's everywhere.
It's all over. It's playgrounds. It's pesticides in the parks. It's the golf course nearby. Yeah. And Environmental Working Group, their body burden study found that babies are being born today in the U.S. with 285 chemicals already in their blood on average. They did studies in conjunction with the American Red Cross and took blood samples and found this out. And it was really shocking. There's industrial chemicals and plasticizers and a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. So when your child comes into this world and already has a disadvantage, and then you put them in a polluted nursery unknowingly. And I know Green Guard, I think, was part of this segment on ABC News a couple years ago, where they said, hey, let's test how many chemicals is this average nursery off-gassing, how many VOCs from new furniture, the carpeting, the brand new paint, the mattress, all of this. And they found, I think it was 300 chemicals. And that was just your traditional standard nursery. So it's no surprise that we're seeing so many of these illnesses.
That's crazy. Barry, we want to empower our listeners. So how do we avoid flame retardant exposures?
So let's take this step by step. So the most basic point, once again, is try to be as natural in the real sense of the word natural. See, the problem with the word natural is that it's not a regulated term. Mm-hmm. So anybody can call anything natural and get away with it. And how is the consumer supposed to figure out what really is natural?
Yeah.
So that becomes a difficult, I have to be honest with you. There's no easy way. There really is no easy way. Try to avoid synthetics. Try to use natural materials like cotton and wool and flax and things like that. And then let's take it to the organic. All right. If the product is certified organic, it's going to be better. It won't necessarily be the best, but it'll certainly be way better than the other competitive products on the marketplace.
Right.
So if it's certified organic by GOTS, the Global Organic Textile Standard, you have a good chance of a much better product.
Yeah. That's awesome. And Ron, had this quote a while ago, which I love. A lot of people don't think about it, but cotton is a crop and it's the most heavily sprayed crop in the world. 25%, 20 or 25% of the world's insecticides are sprayed on cotton.
You're quoting me, Lise.
I am quoting Ron. And so this goes for even like your sheets and your clothing. And Barry's wearing a cotton shirt today. And
he looks dapper. Looks very nice.
He's dapper and healthy. But no, it's true. And so you are paying for not having those toxic pesticides, whether it's your sheets and your bedding, and you guys sell all of that.
There's another certification that we really should mention. That's a good certification. It's called Made Safe. Made S-A-F-E. It's a very good certification. So here's what you do. You look for a GOTS certified product, or you look for a Made Safe certified product, Green Guard Gold certified product. Those are good certifications. You can go to Green America. They have lists of products. They're not, they're fine. So there are places where you can go to research the better products.
Oh, thank you for saying that, because as we kind of touched upon last time, certifications in food is different than certifications in personal care, which is different than mattresses. So you do need to know what to look for. Your website shows all the logos and shows lists of the certifications, which I think is fantastic, because it really is consumer confidence when you go there and you see that, and you know it's not just Barry saying, hey, our product is safe. It's all these third independent parties. So Barry, give us a little overview of what a shopper can find on your website besides mattresses.
So we're bedding related. So in addition to the mat, and we really don't make anything that goes over you when you're sleeping. We make everything that goes under you.
Okay.
So we have mattress toppers. A mattress topper, if you can't afford a whole mattress, just get a mattress topper, just put it over what you have now. And it'll certainly be very helpful. And we make
that's such a great tip. Yeah.
That's
very comfortable too. You mentioned comfort is one of the key things. That really adds comfort to the mattress.
Right. So we make mattress toppers, then we make sheets, and we make pillows and protector pads. So those are the things that we make. We also make the foundations. Underneath
the foundation,
beneath the mattress. So anything below you, that's what we specialize in.
Okay. What you would be laying on. And that goes for crib mattresses, adult mattresses, every kind.
Yeah.
Well, how does Naturepedic avoid using flame retardant chemicals in their products?
So we don't use very much petroleum, period. In most of our mattresses, there's essentially very little. We've eliminated almost all the petroleum that's used in a typical mattress for certainly most of our mattresses. So that's the biggest single reason why we are able to avoid having to add any flame retardants. Okay, so we use organic cotton, we use organic wool, we use PLA made from sugarcane. So we have different ways to avoid the issue. And then there's the design. Sometimes we design things in certain ways to help make sure that there's no risk of getting something that's highly flammable. So it's a combination of the materials and the design.
Okay. And I also love that the materials, which a lot of people don't know, these natural materials like the natural latex, the wool, the organic cotton, that they're also really good in other areas too, being dust mite resistant. Wool has a natural water repellency, doesn't it? Wasn't wool good for like cribs? For toppers and things like that. Yeah. So, and then we talked about the breathability, you're not going to be sweating all night. You have more of a cooling effect. So these materials are good from a chemical perspective, but also a biological perspective, especially people who have dust mite allergies, which is so common today, right?
The more, when you go with natural materials, you're at the end of the day, you're much better off than everything else.
Yeah.
And then we try to do that as much as we can.
I love that. Well, you guys are doing such an amazing job. You have beautiful showrooms. Your showrooms are stunning. I think
craftsmanship. I wanted to mention the Amish.
Amish. Let's give a plug to the Amish. So your factory is based in Ohio. Can you tell us a little bit about the Amish community there and how they help?
Well, I'll tell you our inside joke if I
We love jokes.
Do you know how to tell an Amish person how to do something that you need done?
No.
You keep your mouth shut because he'll figure it out before you ever will.
I love it. Yeah, that's true. Speaking of people who know how to go back to nature and natural.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're good people, and we appreciate having them, and we treat them well. We really do. It's not a joke. And they treat us well.
Yeah.
And they have the right to stop anything if they don't like something. It's a different kind of factory than you might see in a typical factory. And for example, they helped us make face masks. Last year March, when everything went to hell, we started making face masks, and the Amish helped us, and they were great.
Yeah, they have organic face masks. Speaking of breathability, speaking of like if you're going to be covering your mouth all day, you don't want to be using masks that have chemicals.
Exactly.
Your masks are organic, certified organic material, which I think is great. You're the only company I know that even sells that.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I'm going to post the video in the show notes at ronandlisa.com/podcast, because you guys have to watch this video of how their mattresses are manufactured. And you can see a lot of the artisans, making these mattresses. It's really a beautiful thing to watch. You can see the care that they take. And our readers, they just went crazy when I did this video last time. They just loved it.
Well, Barry, it goes without saying, thank you again for joining us twice. That was incredible. We enjoyed having you on the show, and we learned so much as usual.
Thank you, Barry.
It's my pleasure. And the bottom line is we all have to become more cognizant for all the products that we get, and try to avoid the products that are more dangerous. And it has to come from the bottom up. Everybody has to do their part. And that's how we're going to change our society for everybody's good, for us and our kids, just everybody.
Just everybody. Well said. Okay, so Barry, a lot of customers are confused when they go to buy an organic mattress. How do they know? Does the salesperson have to tell them, or will there be a tag on the mattress that says what they're telling you is true, actually is?
Okay, so there are all kinds of tags. There's the real old tag that everybody has seen a million times, where at the top of that tag it says, "Do not remove under penalty of law."
Everyone's scared to take that tag off. It's like,
Okay. So where did that tag come from, and why is it on all the mattresses? So let me give you the history. This tag goes back 100 years. 100 years ago, mattress manufacturers were saying, well, nobody's looking under the hood. Nobody knows what we're putting in there. So why don't we just put a little bit of garbage in there? Literally. And sometimes a lot more than just a little bit of garbage. Okay. And at some point in time, all that became a big, huge issue. And the government created what's called a law tag, or a law label. Okay. That's what the hillbillies call it. It's a law label. All right. That's the name of it. But take a look at that law label, and it will never tell you the main part of it. You'll see heavy black lines. Everything within the heavy black line is that law label. It will never tell you what's on the surface. It'll tell you what's inside. And so there's 2 points. One is, why does it not tell you what's on the surface? Because back then, 100 years ago, the idea was, we can see what's on the surface. Just tell us what's inside. What are you stuffing this thing with? That's one. Number two, the law from 100 years ago was very different than what's going on today. So they don't really have to tell you very much. And they certainly don't have to tell you about flame retardants or about chemicals or about any of that kind of stuff. So they do have to say polyurethane foam, or they might say just urethane foam, which is the same thing, or things like that. So that's one label. Then there's another label that's a flammability label for one of the 2 flammability tests that have to be done. Okay, and it'll tell you that it passes. It'll pass that flammability. It doesn't tell you how they're passing the test. Doesn't tell you what chemicals they're using. All they're doing is saying we passed the test. And then there can be separate labels on the mattress with these private logos. So if you're GOTS certified, then yes, you should have a GOTS logo on your mattress. If you're Green Guard certified, hopefully you put that logo on your mattress, and so on. Those are voluntary logos.
Voluntary by the manufacturer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, that is so good to know. So guys, if hopefully you're not ever going to buy a conventional mattress after today, so you won't have a need to ask. But I guess you would also want to ask an organic mattress, hey, what did you use for the flame retardant? And they have to legally tell you, oh, wool is our flame retardant.
Well, let me just say something right now. They don't have to legally tell you anything. Let's get that clear. Okay? If they're honest with you and if they're certified, hopefully they'll tell you. So even the certifications, like for example, even the GOTS certification, I'm not here to criticize GOTS. GOTS is as good as it gets, okay? So I'm not criticizing, but even the GOTS certification allows for flame retardant chemicals. Not all of them. They say, well, don't use these. Okay, we won't use these. We'll use something else.
Oh,
okay. But then there's a bigger problem with some of these chemicals. And I'm not saying this is a GOTS problem necessarily, but I'm just painting a broader picture. When somebody says, whether it's the government or anybody else, when somebody says, do not use this chemical, what if they're able to tweak the formula, create a different chemical that's legal? They met the requirement. So, it gets a little bit loosey.
Funny business.
Yeah.
Barry, we see that in every industry, in products in your home, whether it's nonstick cookware or plastic bisphenol A. They're doing that all the time, where they'll say it's bisphenol A free, but then they're using this chemical, or we don't have PTFE, but we're using another replacement chemical. So yeah, guys, I mean, at the end of the day, and Barry was talking about GOTS, which is GOTS, the Global Organic Textiles Standard. That's the tag you want to look for. And really, at the end of the day, look for a brand you can trust, a brand that isn't trying to hide anything, and that is happy to answer your questions and be transparent, like Naturepedic. So thanks, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Friends, we hope you have enjoyed this show as much as we have. Are you ready to enjoy a healthier, non-toxic sleep? I hope so after this show. Join the organic mattress revolution and rest easier on a certified organic mattress, proudly crafted in the USA without petrochemicals, flame retardants, polyurethane foam, and other toxic materials. Visit naturepedic.com. That's naturepedic.com, and get ready to snooze in the lap of organic luxury. And listeners, don't forget to use code RonandLisa15. That's Ron and Lisa 15 to save 15% on new mattresses, bedding for the whole family. That's naturepedic.com.
And head to ronandlisa.com for your chance to win your very own Naturepedic mattress. We'll see you next week, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. See you later.
This episode of the Healthy Home Hacks podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more healthy living strategies and tactics to help you create the healthy home you've always dreamed of. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.